When it comes to test automation, one of the most important thing that we should know are web elements. Now, in order to understand what is actually a web element, let's just take this HTML page as an example. Now, whatever website that you're visiting, the content that is actually displayed is actually an HTML page. So now let's inspect this and try to understand what is actually a web element. Now here we can see the full source code of this particular website. Now here what we have is actually an HTML tag, and inside this HTML tag you can only see two tags, which is actually a head and then a body tag. So now if you take any HTML page, it will always contain this two as the base. Now HTML is the topmost layer, and if you take the head, this is something like a header which contains informations like the title of the page or some styles that needs to be loaded and stuffs like that. But what we are going to more discuss now is actually this body tag. Now if you expand this body tag, you would be able to see actually a lot of informations that's basically available. There are a lot of tags which are actually present inside the body tag. So you can consider this something like an hierarchy. So now inside body you might have actually a div. Now if we expand the div, you could see that there are two divs and actually an a tag. So basically this is just a hierarchy or like a tree structure. So that's how it is placed. So now everything which is actually present inside this HTML is actually a web element. Web element is not necessary that it have to be interactable. For example, here we have actually a text box, here we have a button. So it's not necessary that web elements means that that is something that we could interact with. Even non-interactable elements, like for example, this div is also actually a web element. So technically what you can do is you can actually access those web elements. So normally in the web automation, what happens is you try to locate this kind of web elements and try to perform some actions on it. So now, for example, let's just actually take this and we can see how we could actually access this. So in this example, I'm just actually copying the class name. Let's go to the console and then let's type document dot get element by class name, and then let's just actually put the class name what we have copied over there and just press enter. Now you could see that this particular line actually returned that particular div tag. So this is how you are actually accessing that particular tag. Now once you have accessed that web element, then basically you can perform some operations with that. So for example, like as I said, here we have something called as zero active, and basically this is not interactable. If I click something, nothing happens. Now let's try to actually access this one. So if I see here, this is actually a span which has an ID. Now let's try to actually access this. Let's go here and go with the same example of document dot get element by ID is there. So let's go for get element by ID and then let's hit enter. So now you can see this basically returned a span tag. So now once you have this, you can actually perform some actions with it, or you can also extract something with it. So for example, in this case, there's no action, I cannot perform anything over here, but what I can do is let's actually take the inner text of this. Now, if I ask you to take the inner text of this, it would give you this zero active. So basically in the web automation, this is what actually happens. You are trying to locate actually a web element. Now, once you have located that web element, you either perform something like typing or clicking or scrolling, or you take some value out of it. Now, when you're performing something, that's is actually actions. So you are doing a click action, you are doing a type action, or you're doing a scroll action. And the other part is when you're extracting some value and checking, for example, if this is actually equal to zero active or not. So this is basically the assertions. So now whenever when you're doing the test automation, this is the simple flow that in most of the cases you'll be following, where you would be identifying a web element, you will be accessing that web element, and either you will be doing an action or assertions.